Rack House Ramblings, episode 15, take 1. Hey, this is Rack House Ramblings. I'm Jeff, and this is episode number 15. Today's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to this. I had to put some ideas together. I'm sorry about the delay. Once again, I seem to be dragging my feet. But what I do is I go through the whole week and think of ideas. And it's hard to kind of organize them, and that's what takes me so long. I've always got stuff to talk about, but I want to do you guys a favor and kind of organize it before I record it. So here we go. I want to start, the show is going to have a review of my Anthony Bourdain Day. That was last Thursday on June 25th. Then today I'm going to talk about Macomb County Commissioner Candice Miller and her fight against flushable wipes. Remember I talked about the Fatberg a few episodes back? We're going to revisit that. Then I've got a new bourbon for the Spotlight. It's distilled locally here in Michigan. That should be pretty cool. And I have a surprise project. It's a new project I'm starting. I think you guys are going to like hearing about it. But before we get into all that stuff, I got a few other things to talk about. First, there's a couple new podcasts I've been listening to, and I think I mentioned this before, this first one. It's a true crime podcast, and I'm not really a true crime kind of guy, but it's called Missing in Alaska. And I started listening to it when we were driving out to North Dakota. I'm kind of hooked on it. And it's a true story. It's a podcast that talks about this mysterious plane disappearance in the skies over Alaska. And it took place like almost 50 years ago. It was October of 1972. And what makes it noteworthy, I guess, is there were two representatives, from Washington, D.C. One was Hal Boggs, and he was a Democrat from Louisiana, and the other was a guy named Nick Begich, who was a Democrat from Alaska. And you probably don't know this, but the Hal Boggs guy was on the commission that reviewed the JFK assassination. So the podcast talks about this plane disappearing and all that, and the circumstances leading up to it, and the possibility of a bomb that was put on the plane by the mafia. No shit. So it ties into the mafia, and there's actually some Detroit connections to a mafia family here in Detroit. And that's once they start mentioning Detroit, and this guy went from Detroit to Alaska as part of the mob, was involved in this bombing. It's kind of neat to listen to. I think it's a juicy plot, and it's hard to stop listening to it. But I think you guys will like it too. Check it out. It's called Missing in Alaska. And if you're using Podbean or whatever, give it a search if you like that sort of thing. Another one I stumbled across is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. It's really funny. It's called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. And this one, it's hosted by two of the guys that starred on the sitcom Scrubs. I don't know if you remember Zach Braff and Donald Faison. It's the white guy and the African-American guy, and they're really funny. And what I didn't realize was on the show, they're the doctor students and all that, and they're best friends. But in real life, they're best friends also. And I didn't know this. Apparently, when they would wrap up a season of Scrubs, these two guys rent an apartment in New York and would do all their summer jobs acting and things like that. And they play off each other really well. And I've never watched Scrubs, never seen a full episode ever. And what these guys do is kind of review episodes very loosely, but they're really funny. They play off each other really well. And I'm probably about 6 or 7 episodes into it, and I've laughed my ass off every time. It's really, really funny. So give it a listen. It's called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. And one more thing, you know what? The new season of Alone is out. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a huge fan of Alone. And that's the show on the History Channel where they put people out in the wilderness and you only get 10 items. And in seasons past, the one who stays out the longest wins. And this season is a little bit different because you stay out 100 days and you get $1 million. And it's probably 3 weeks into it, and 2 or 3 people have left the show already, but it's something cool. Give it a watch. It's on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock, and they're way up in the Canadian Arctic. And if you're into that survival outdoors kind of thing, you'll probably like it. But I guess those are the things I got to get out of the way real quick for my introduction. But let's get on with it. Rack House Ramblings, episode number 15, and we'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and we're going to talk about Anthony Bourdain Day. And my last podcast, I told you guys about it. It was Thursday the 25th. That's Anthony Bourdain's birthday. And the whole idea, one of the things that I liked celebrating about it is that you kind of get together with friends and you have fun and you cook things and laugh and drink and what have you. And so on that Thursday evening, there's a couple of friends that I invited over, and we had a really, really good time. You know, Megan and Phil and Aaron and Emily, I had a good time. I'm sure you guys knew it, and I told you, but I was so happy for that night. But what I did was I asked the guests to bring over a dish to pass, and I said, hey, you know, go on the internet. I even had a recipe book. Pick something out of here that's Anthony Bourdain inspired. And it doesn't have to be the exact thing, but something inspired, whether it's an entree or an appetizer or what have you. And so they did, and it was really, really cool. So what we did is Aaron and Emily brought over meatball parm, and I'm pretty sure Aaron made it. He likes to cook, and it was so freaking good. And then Aaron brought over a 6-pack of this mango IPA from the brewery by his place, and that was some good shit too. We'll save that for another day. But then also Megan and Phil brought over some homemade from scratch mushroom soup, and it was so good. And the only mushroom soup I've ever had is Campbell's, you know, from the can. So this stuff was so much more, I guess, flavorful. And after hearing that it took her, you know, like a whole afternoon to make it, you could taste it. You could definitely taste it. And I don't know if I told her enough how much I liked it, but I really liked it. I kept some leftovers, as a matter of fact. And then Ann and I made lasagna. Ann did a homemade Caesar salad. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Caesar salad is not from Italy. It's actually Mexican people made it. But anyway, in real Caesar salad, there's anchovies. And so we went in the Anthony Bourdain cookbook, and it called for 2 different kinds of anchovies, as a matter of fact. And so you had to get your, romaine lettuce, and we got fresh cheese, and then you had to make croutons. And the way you do it is you cube up bread, and you fry the bread in olive oil with some anchovies and some fresh garlic, and these croutons were so good. Then, of course, you had to make your own homemade Caesar dressing. Once again, that's olive oil, garlic, and more anchovies. And it turned out really, really good. I'm not a huge salad person, but I thought it was really good. So back to what I made, I did lasagna from scratch. And it was a recipe straight out of the Anthony Bourdain cookbook. And I can't even tell you how good it tasted. And you know what else? I made appetizers. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm so sorry I'm so scattered, but my appetizers I made were deviled eggs. And the twist with deviled eggs is, I don't know if you guys know this, and I didn't know it either, but when you're making your deviled eggs, really it's just mayonnaise and the eggs, right? So depending on how you spice it, it can go many different directions. So I did a recipe with salsa. And I had a really good, they were the smoked green chili salsa from Costco, mixed it in with the mayo and the eggs, and put some little pieces of tomato on it to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit, and then sprinkled some chili powder on top, and lo and behold, there you go. They were like Southwest style spicy deviled eggs. And I even did another version with red salsa with the tomato type salsa. So some were green and some were red, but they were both spicy and both topped with chili powder. Then another appetizer that was in the book, sounded like fun, were bar nuts. You know, like when you go to the bar, they used to have like a little bowl of nuts and goldfish or whatever. So these were old school mixed nuts. And what you do is you take egg whites and you mix it up with salt and hot chili powder. And so the egg whites and the chili powder, you coat the mixed nuts in it and then bake it in the oven for like 30 minutes. And they come out with like this little crispy coating, and they're a little bit spicy. Brown sugar, that also went on there too. Damn, were those good. So that was another appetizer I made. And then let's go, before I get too far, let me get back to lasagna. So lasagna was my first time cooking, and I tried to cooking lasagna, I should say, first time doing it ever. And I wanted to follow the cookbook as best as I could. And so I read everything that, the chef Anthony Bourdain did. And he says to make it a day in advance. So then you put it in the refrigerator, And that's how all the flavors marry together, which I never realized it. But I did it 2 days ahead and refrigerated it so it could set up. And I'll tell you what, it was so good. And just making it took me an entire afternoon, every bit of 5 or 6 hours, I think it was. And before we even did that, I had to go to 2 different stores. Besides Kroger, we had to go to this little Italian market in Livonia called Cantoro's, and really cool store if you ever need anything at 5 Mile and Haggerty. So if you can't tell, I really like making things. I make all kinds of things. So this lasagna process was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. So I guess, thinking back, what makes it enjoyable, I like knowing like that finished product comes from your own 2 hands. And I know a bunch of you guys are like that as well. So give it a try. Lasagna, old school way. I liked it. The dinner party was cool. We ate, we laughed. We told a bunch of stories. We sampled some bourbon here in the bourbon room. And the night went on, probably busted out a guitar and a ukulele and had a really enjoyable night. It was fun. We'll do it again next year. Everyone's food was so good. And I liked hearing about how it was prepared. Like everyone took some time. It wasn't just, grab it and come over here. You actually took the time, and I really appreciate that. Took time out of your day and planned and prepared and made it and brought it over and shared it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that's part of, in my opinion, part of the whole Anthony Bourdain Day celebration. So it's not just getting together, but it's like the build up. It's bringing something that you poured your heart into and shared it, and it makes it so much better. And plus, stuff from scratch is always so much better. So this year, the warden limited me on the number of guests, so I could only have a handful. But next year, I'm going to give everybody fair warning. Next year, it's going to be bigger. So think about it. Think about a dish to make. Mark your calendar for June 25th of next year for Anthony Bourdain Day. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Next segment, flushable wipes. So this past week, there was another episode of Great Lakes Now on PBS, and that's where I saw the story about flushable wipes I talked about in a couple of podcasts ago, and the big fatberg that was in the sewers in Macomb County. So they revisited the story, and I'm going to revisit it too. It was about the county commissioner, Candice Miller. She filed a lawsuit a few weeks back in federal court about flushable wipes. She filed a lawsuit against 9 different companies. No shit, 9. And we'll back up a step. She was really big advocate about not flushing the wipes. This big fatberg, it was 19-ton piece of sewage, all held together by flushable wipes. So what she's suing for is the label. Number 1, it shouldn't be called flushable. And number 2, she wants something on there that says, not to flush it. Well, it turns out if you grab a pack of wipes and they say flushable, all that, you look down in the lower corner somewhere small, there's this little symbol of a stick figure holding looks like a little wipe over the toilet and dropping it in. Then there's a circle with slash through it. This thing is probably smaller than the size of a postage stamp. And that's what she's fighting for, is to get that enlarged a lot bigger. So she went so far as, like I said, 9 different companies. And I guess almost all the wipes that we use are made by these 9 companies. And so we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted if I hear anything else, but I got to agree with her. If it's something little that we can do like that, just wipe your butt and throw them in the garbage. You don't have to flush them down. So there you have it. There's your update on the flushable wipes, and Macomb County Commissioner Candice Miller filed a lawsuit. So there you go. If you're interested more in that, go to the Great Lakes Now website on the internet. We'll be right back. Thanks. Okay, Rack House Ramblings is back, and it's time for my surprise. I got something cool to talk about. I'm sure you guys have seen, plenty of the reality shows on TV where they do like a house remodel in 3 days, or they restore a hot rod in 1 week. Well, I'm going to try my hand at a restoration project of my own. Last week, I found a vintage moped on Craigslist, and I bought it. I think it's a classic. I don't know about if you guys will, but I think it is. And So when I was growing up, this was kind of a big deal. This is a 1984 Yamahopper, and that's the name of it, Yamahopper. It was the reason they used the name Yamahopper because they were kind of doing a play on words of Hopalong Cassidy from way back when. And I don't know if you've ever heard about it, so I'll tell you guys about these things. It's made by Yamaha. It's a little 50cc gas-powered scooter, and it has seat just for one person. It has like a headlight and turn signals horn, like a little mini motorcycle, right? And Yamaha gave this, it actually has a model number. The model number is QT50 for 50cc, right? So they were made by Yamaha Motor Company from 1979 until 1992. No shit. And I was trying to look for some sales numbers. I'm sure it's in the at least 100,000. I'm sure it is. They were everywhere. And so Yamaha had one, Honda had one, Suzuki had one. There were even some that had like in Europe where they were pedaled like a bicycle and all that. This one didn't have pedals. It just had foot pegs. And they're popular in the 70s and 80s for a couple of reasons. They were, of course, fun to ride. They were really low maintenance, and they were fuel efficient. People used to say these things would sip on gas, and I couldn't find the official like miles per gallon from Yamaha or on Wikipedia for that matter. But there were some websites quoting 90 miles per gallon for sure. Seems to be a popular number. Some were as high as 135 miles per gallon. No shit. So think about that. So let me back up a little bit before I go down this Yamahopper rabbit hole. When I was a teenager in the early 80s, mopeds were just coming on the scene. And here I was, I had my little BMX Mongoose bike and a paper route. And when I saw my buddies kind of ripping around the neighborhood on these mopeds, I thought, holy shit, I want one. That is so cool. But being a kid with just a paper route or whatever, I wasn't good with money ever. They were advertised for $459, and you could get them for cheaper than that from what I'm reading. And my day's finally come. I got one. This one, it needs a lot of work, needs a lot of help. It was listed as a parts bike, right? So I'll start posting a few pictures of this on my Instagram for you guys to check out. But it's really an engineering marvel when I'm taking this thing apart and looking at it and reading about it. And what it is, they're really, really simple. There's this tube, a frame made out of tubing, and it's a hollow tubing. And think of the letter J. It's shaped like a letter J. And at the top of the J is handlebars, and they're just like bicycle handlebars. And in the bottom of the letter J, where it kind of loops out the bottom, that's where the motor mounts. And it's only 3 bolts that holds this little motor on. And the motor, it has a direct drive shaft that sticks straight out the back, and it has a worm drive gear at the end. And where that worm drive gear at the end is, the axle goes across side to side, and that's where the wheel attaches to. So the motor goes, turns the worm drive, spins the wheel, and off you go. When you lift up the seat, it's kind of neat. There's these 2 little fill caps. One is for gas and one is for oil. This engine is called a 2-stroke engine. So it uses a gas-oil mix, pretty much like your weed whacker and your chainsaw and all that. The beauty is Yamaha had a system where it mixes its own, and they were famous for this system. Suzuki had one too. And so you put gas in one side and you put oil in the other, and this thing mixes its own, and off you go. And the whole thing is like, if you ever had to mix it yourself, you know what a pain in the ass it is. So when this system came out, it's genius, I think. The whole thing weighs only 95 pounds, and the stats say it can go a whopping 30 miles an hour. And compared to pedaling my old Mongoose, that was like light speed. So I found this thing on Craigslist. It's blue. It was covered in dirt and oil and grime. I took it home for the low price of $140. And for me, that's a small price to pay for a chance to relive my youth. As I started kind of wiping away all the grime in the years, it's cleaning up really good. I've been using a 409 spray and this little handheld steamer, and that is a powerful combination for cleaning shit up. And the chrome parts, like the rims and the luggage racks, have been using steel wool with baking soda and lemon juice. And I'll tell you what, that shines the shit out of chrome. It works so good. And yesterday I put together my first little parts list, got online, and voila, I got some new gaskets and seals and rubber foot pegs on the way. And it needed a speedometer, so I found an original one too. I ordered that as well. But you know what? I have one request. Maybe you guys can help me with this. Someone out there might know this, but there's a little ignition key, and the key is missing. So I know I can do a jumper, I know I can hot wire and things like that, but I'd like to get the key working. And if anyone knows how to get a key made to fit one of these little ignitions, man, that would really help me out in this restoration project. So enough about the Yamahopper. That's my surprise. That's my new restoration project. So there you have it. We'll be right back. Okay, Rack House Ramblings episode 15 is back, and this is the Bourbon Spotlight segment. On Father's Day, I got a bottle from my son, really cool gift, and it's a handcrafted, small batch, straight bourbon XXX whiskey made by Traverse City Whiskey Company right here in Michigan. That's pretty cool. It's a first for me. I've had their cherry whiskey, and I like that a lot, but not their bourbon. Or I should say, cherry whiskey was a bourbon also, but not their straight. It's called XXX Bourbon. So this week's Spotlight, let's talk about Traverse City Whiskey Company up in Traverse City. You know, the label says straight bourbon XXX whiskey, XXX. And if it sounds like a lot of verbiage, don't blame me. I'm just reading it right from the label. And I started out by going to their webpage, tcwhiskey.com. And they have 5 expressions listed on their website. The first is the bourbon, the XXX that I'm sampling tonight. Then there's a barrel proof version. And the barrel proof comes in at 115 to 120. Tonight, the bourbon I'm trying is 86 proof. They also have a cherry-infused bourbon at 70 proof, a North Coast rye at 90 proof, and the last is a port barrel-finished bourbon at 86 proof. And I don't know if you guys remember, but one of my favorite bourbons, Angel's Envy, is port-finished. In 1792, they also have a port-finish expression. So if you guys are listening, if you ever see a bourbon out there that says port barrel-finished, grab it and give it a try. So also listed on their website is their mash bill. It doesn't give you the percentages, but of course it's made with corn, rye, and malted barley. And if you know anything about bourbon, it has to be at least 51% corn. And they give a description here. It says, amber and elegant. Our XXX straight bourbon whiskey has been aged at least 4 years in new American white oak barrels with warm vanilla and a little heat. This is your go-to whiskey for all occasions. Perfect for sipping. It still holds its own in your much-deserved craft cocktail. So let's see. Let me open this bottle. And, you know, you can find Traverse City Whiskey at many of your local party stores and things like that. I've seen it at Kroger. I've seen it at Meijer. And remember, drink responsibly. Don't drink and drive, of course. Let's see what we have. There we go. It has a good nose, smells really good, and like they're calling out, what was it, the flavor profile on here? Warm vanilla. Can definitely smell vanilla. Oh, it does have a little heat to it. So this one, the finish going down, does have a little bit of heat. Definitely smell the vanilla. And let me try another one. Strong vanilla, as a matter of fact. This is really good. If you guys see this out there, I'd give it a try. That's the Traverse City Whiskey Straight Bourbon XXX, 86 proof. Wow. Well, that's the end of the show. Thank you guys all so much for listening. A little bit on the shorter side today. I hope everyone has a safe week, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy.